teaches us how work can be satisfying. And our next presenter has those kind of lessons. She's a poet. She's a zine artist. She speaks her mind and reflection in stories, in narrative. Amber McCrary. So Navajo will want to welcome her.
I chose to participate because self-care is important, and I thought it was interesting to learn about or to talk about self-care from a Native perspective. I watched other talks and interviews with other people that I look up to. So Joy Harjo, I listened to one of her interviews on NPR, and I felt like that was really inspirational. I think Ramilla kind of brought up a good point about vulnerability and how that's part of self-care, especially when you talk about self-care with other people, that being vulnerable, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to talk about mental health as a Native person.
Yat she Amber inishia kithachitni nishle nakai dina bashachin ashihi dashache tetnasana dashanella ahyahet. So I'm Amber McCrary, and I am Red House, born for the Mexican people clan. I was born in Tuba City, and I grew up in Flagstaff, Arizona, and my dad is from Hard Rock, Arizona, and my mom is from Shanto, Arizona. So that's who I am, and that's where I'm from. And I currently live in Acamel Autumnlands, also known as Phoenix, Arizona. So this is a little bit about who I am. And my presentation is how an assimilated Dene woman with body issues, depression/anxiety, and imposter syndrome practices self-care in this day and age. So these are all of the things about me. And I forgot to add chronically ill as well, because I do suffer from, anxiety, depression, migraines, and insomnia. So, yeah. Growing up, I lived in Kinflani, Arizona, also known as Flagstaff. And in Flagstaff is where I went to an elementary school where all the kids were white and rich and really good looking. And, before that, I went to Tuba City boarding school. So I went to Tuba City boarding school from kindergarten to second grade. And then out of nowhere, my parents were like, okay, we're moving to Flagstaff. It's going to be fun and great. And, you're going to be living this whole other life, which they didn't tell me. But I went to elementary school, and I remember everyone being really nice. And I remember I had really great teachers. And that's where I learned to love reading. So the book that really changed my life was Matilda, because my second grade teacher, Miss Weaver, she read Matilda with so much emphasis and gumption. And that's where I really, really loved learning to read and learning the joys of reading. And I always try to when I read out loud, I always try to imagine Mrs. Weaver in my head and think that I'm doing a service, or I'm, doing kind of what she did. I hope that the people in the audience are excited about what I'm reading as much as, they are. So, I grew up in Flag, and, with all these people and kids that, they would talk about stuff at show and tell, oh, my parents, they bought a brand new Suburban, or I found out my great-great-grandfather was the third president of the United States. And everyone's like, wow, cool. And, I didn't have any of that stuff. And I was just maybe there's nothing special about me. And, that's when I also noticed that I was poor. And those were things that I really remember in my head growing up, was this sense of shame when I moved to Flagstaff compared to Tuba, where, I grew up in the trailer park and like all the kids were fun and we just like were all brown and happy and like riding our bikes and, just being who we were. And then I moved to this place where like, I didn't feel like I had self-worth. And this is a Rezo print I did with one of my friends. It's of a van. And I always remember growing up, we had a van just like this and it was green. And it was a GMC Safari. And my parents loved this van. And my dad would always talk about how it was like a truck instead. I don't know. Anyways, but he was so proud of this van, but I was always embarrassed of this van. Like when my mom would pick me up from school or like from events with like the other kids, because we had this really loud res van and I was always embarrassed of it. And, but to this day, like I love this van now. And like, I make it like I'm reclaiming this van as something that was part of my childhood and part of something that, my parents were so proud of, that they had this car and they could drive us around Flagstaff and pick us up, me and my brother, or if my brother needed to be picked up, then I've, eventually learned how to drive and started driving this van around with my mixtapes and like all my punk rock songs. So this van has a lot of significance in my life. And eventually I went to middle school at Mount Alden Middle School, and I went to Coconino High School. And that's where I realized there's other brown people in Flagstaff. And all the students, all the students from all of Flagstaff on the east side, went to Mount Alden Middle School, Coconino High School. And I was so excited that there was other natives at the school. So I like found my little family, which was like a bunch of like punk rock native girls, and like, all of us would get together and we'd like, all talk about, even though we had anxiety and depression, we didn't really understand it or talk about it, but we had our outlets like punk rock music, going out, hanging out, going to concerts, going downtown. And then eventually we started getting into like, the bad stuff like alcohol and trying drugs. And, that was this is kind of an example of like how it was for me in high school, like the whirlwind. And then also like I have a image of a stomach right there and like how much like I messed up like my body, as a growing teen, and like how my brain was still developing too, and like what it was doing to my body. And I never thought about that, as a teen. And my parents didn't really talk to me either about like drinking or alcohol. I just knew it was around. And I knew that like both of my grandpas, they died from alcoholism. And I knew about like the history, but never knew like what it was doing to my body and like why I was drinking it. And I didn't eventually figure that out until my 20s. And so that was like my self-care when I was a teenager and in my 20s, was drinking. And that was my escape, from all of the weird thoughts in my head or thinking too many thoughts. And it also was my self-medication for depression, anxiety, and just like things that I couldn't answer because I was very confused growing up. Even though as a 34-year-old, I still have like a lot of the same issues, I had growing up when it came to chronic illness, insomnia, depression, identity crisis. I learned to take care of myself in a healthy way. And I'm actually coming up on my 5th year of being alcohol-free. Yeah. And this is just like a little collage I made. And I love collaging. That's one of my self-care things. And I guess it's also part of my art. I never considered myself an artist or a writer or a poet. until people like started saying, "You're an artist, you're a writer," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I would just do things like when I was journaling growing up, and like you're just sitting in my room, like finding magazines or things I thought was cool, like when I was traveling, and I would keep like these like flyers or whatever, and I would put them in like collage style things. But yeah, I've learned to take care of my mental health as I've gotten older, and I've definitely learned to talk to my provider, my healthcare provider, and being more honest with them. Before, I would just kind of mention like little things here and there. But the person that really helped me, her name was Wendy, or is Wendy. And she worked at the health center that I used to work at in Flagstaff. And I felt like I grew like very close to her because she was very like, she understood like a lot of things that were going on with me, where before I would see health providers and they'd say, "Oh, it's just your allergies," or "Oh, you're fine." They didn't really, it seemed like they didn't really care about who I was. They were just trying to get numbers to like say, I saw her today, so it's fine. But like, I felt like with Wendy, she actually listened to what I had to say or what I was feeling or what I was going through. And that was the first time I ever noticed that as for having a healthcare provider. And in the future, even though Wendy moved away, and I went on to, moving too, like I've learned to develop a relationship with my healthcare provider and being more honest about what is going on with my body or what is going on with my mental health. Because they're there, that's why they have their job. They're there to help you. And therapy, I've been going to therapy since my 20s. And I've always had, it's been a hit or miss thing, but I've had therapists that have really helped me in the past, and they've helped me a lot with anxiety or a lot of trauma I've gone through growing up. Having that self-growth as well, like how do I learn from what has happened in my past, and how do I make healthier choices? How do I be more mindful of when I talk to my family? So I have a collage of my family, and I love my family, but we're a dysfunctional family. We have a lot of trauma. I have a lot of trauma that comes from both sides. I have a lot of things that we don't talk about that my parents were just learned not to talk about. But I'm a writer and I'm an artist, and of course I'm like, let's talk about it. But and sometimes they don't want to talk about it. So I'll find, I have a therapist, and she really helps me with, things that I want to talk about or things that I just sometimes at night I just think about or wonder why, I always get sick, or why did I do this when I was younger, or why am I triggered, or why do I get anxious if I'm on the freeway and someone's going too fast? Like just like little things like that, like I noticed about myself, and I'll just remember, okay, I'll try to bring that up with my therapist. Another thing that really helped me grow mainly in my 20s was traveling, and I love traveling. That was the one thing I knew in my 20s that I really wanted to do. It was save money and travel. So some of the places I went to were like the Taj Mahal in India. I went to South Korea. There's a picture of me in one of the Seoul train stops. And what's the other one? Oh, Nepal. That was my favorite place to go to because everyone kind of just looked like me, or I looked like everyone else. So it was fun, like just being in a space where, everyone looks like you and you kind of feel like you just kind of blend in with everyone. And that was something that growing up in Flag or living in the city, like everyone looks so different, which is great. But it was just nice, like kind of just blending in and not like standing out or even just being like a punk rock chick. Like people are like, oh, like she's weird, or, why is she like that? Or why does she dress like that? Or she must be this or that. Something must be wrong with her. So like, it was just nice, like, for a minute, just being kind of like a wallflower. um, yeah, and another self-care practice I do is I focus on foods that make me feel good and foods that are good for me. So like blue corn, as a Navajo woman, I love blue corn, and that's something that I'm just very much attached to. There's a lot of benefits to it. Um, and I also like to write a lot of poetry when it comes to blue corn. I have a book coming out in 2 years. That's my first book, my first official collection of poetry. And a lot of it is based on blue corn. And the title of it's called Blue Corn Tongue. And it talks about, just assimilation. Basically, my first slide is what my book's about. And so blue corn is a very important thing to me, especially as a Navajo woman. I really love garlic. So growing up, my mom never made anything with garlic in it. And once I first discovered it, like when I was around 18, when I ate some Thai food, and I was like, what is this? So ever since then, like anything with garlic in it, I'm like completely happy and like in my zone. And tea, I love tea. So any types of tea that I can find out there, like I always want to try. And there are lots of health benefits to tea as well. So it depends on what kind of tea. And I love educating myself on different cultures. So there's so many different types of tea based on your culture. Like this morning before I came over, I had some Navajo tea, and that kind of was like getting me in the mood to talk about self-care, and also helps with my allergies and my sinuses that I'm going through. Music that heals. So, I've talked before about punk rock, and that's kind of like where my roots are from growing up. But, I also like a lot of like indie music, like Radiohead, Japanese Breakfast, Aphex Twin, Mazzy Star, Beach House, Sade. So a lot of these bands have like really helped me growing up. And I feel like Radiohead is like definitely one of those bands that kind of saved my life, because I was not comfortable in my skin, and I was not comfortable with like just feeling like I never fit in, or that I was like an outcast or a weirdo. But like when I listen to music, it makes me feel like really happy, and it makes me understand like who I am. When I was coming over, I was listening to an interview with Joy Harjo and Terry Gross on NPR. Joy was saying something about pain, and how pain is a tool you can use, and pain is something that you can use that will work with you, or you can let pain be a tool that will work against you. Let it take over your life in bad ways. So like for me, when I had dealt with pain, I dealt with it in, ways like sleeping too much, or drinking too much, or eating too much, or just too much of something that can be bad for you. And I'm starting to learn to use pain as a tool that works for me. So if I'm feeling pain, I'll work on an art piece, or I'll write about it, or I'll listen to music that will help me with whatever I might be going through when it comes to pain. So I always try to use pain now as something that works with me rather against me. And I also reach out to people that heal. So surrounding you with people that help you in your process of healing or self-care is really important. So the people that I learn to surround myself with are sober friends, and people that don't pressure me to feel like I need to drink to be fun. And I really love the people that I have, friends that are my family, that, we just get together, we laugh, we hang out, we do art, we listen to music. And I don't feel like I need to drink to feel like we're doing something fun together, or that I need to prove that I'm a fun person, you know. I also learned to have healthy relationships too. So I have a really great partner that's very supportive of everything that I do, especially when it came to changing my career from a public health educator to an artist. He's been very, very supportive, and he never judges me. That's one thing that I love so much about him. And especially when I sleep too much, that's a good thing too. He doesn't judge me on that. Yeah, and I just learned to have supportive friends. It's always great to have people that are there to support you. That's like the number one thing that I've learned. Books that heal. So as a writer, I've found artists that have really helped me in my healing and self-care process. Some of these writers, like Sandra Cisneros, Ophelia Zepeda, Natalie Diaz, one of them's right here, Tanea Winder, like they have helped me so much when it comes to being a Native woman and doing what I want and finding my worth in this world, you know, because as a Native woman, I'm living in this world where I'm taught that I'm supposed to look like a white woman, or I'm supposed to be 100 pounds, or I have to look like this, or be like this, or talk like this, or, you know, just all these things that aren't who I really am. And I feel like books are part of that, and reading is part of that. And in result from books and reading, I've learned to write, and I've learned to find my voice as a Native woman and talk to other Native women. Humor is another big thing for me that really helps me, you know, whether it's a day-to-day thing or it's an overall thing. It definitely is part of the healing process. And usually, you know, if I've had a long day or a tough day, I'll watch a funny show. Superstore is my go-to show. So I love that show, and it makes me so happy, and I laugh all the time when I watch it. And I also love a lot of like dark comedy, so like Ghost World. I don't know if anyone, that's from the early 2000s, but it's a very dark comedy, and I love dark comedy. And then of course, you know, Reservation Dogs. I think we all love Reservation Dogs. And then art that heals, like I kind of mentioned. I love to collage, I love to write. If I could draw, I would draw all the time, but I can't draw, so yeah. And then I also started a writing circle called Abalone Writing Circle with other Native women, and we get together and we do like writing prompts, and then we'll just write, you know, for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, and we've been writing a lot about Indigenous love, and I just feel like we're in a space that's safe enough for all of us to come together and talk and just, you know, and I love that it's all Native women because we don't have to be explaining to one person like something that we've all gone through. And I just love that. And I love that we all share words, and it's definitely a healing process for me and for the women as well. And I forgot to mention that I own a press called Abalone Mountain Press, and it's specifically for Native voices. And my office is just downtown, down the street. So part of this Abalone Writing Circle, I just wanted to do it so we can get together and write. But since we've been doing this subject on Indigenous love, a lot of the women in the circle really want to publish it. So since this is part of a publishing project, we hope to put an anthology together just about Indigenous love. And the last part of my my self-care process is doing things that I don't like, but I know are good for me. So exercising. I do not like exercising, but I know that's something that is good for me, and that's something that I need for my health. So exercising, incorporating more vegetables in my meals. I was a former health educator, so I need to practice what I preach. and seeing a healthcare provider regularly, even, when I'm not sick. I just need to make sure that I'm taking care of my body, just as much as I'm taking care of my mind, and creating a home. So that has been one of the most important things that I've learned to do in my 30s. My 20s, I would go from apartment to apartment, couch to couch, go back home, and live in various places. But I've learned to finally create a home, and to find this home to be a safe space, or a space where I learn to have that nurturing feel, or make foods that I love, listen to music that I love, read books, write in this home. So it goes back to if you've ever read Sandra Cisneros, one of her memoirs is about finding home and how important home is to her, and having her own house. So this is something that is a new goal of mine too, is just trying to find a house, trying to make a home, a beautiful home for me and my partner, and just, continue living, our life. And this is just a little graph that I actually found at this place called K'e. It's on Main Street in Mesa. And I was using the bathroom, and this was in the bathroom, right in front of you. And I took a picture of it because I was like, this is totally me. The illusion part is things that I tell, my head tells me, you're not good enough, you're not this, you're not that. And then there's the part that says the truth, which is so the first part says, you are alone, you are isolated. And the second part says, the truth, you are intricately and intimately connected to the universe in which you unquestionably belong. And this is something I feel is very important. Sometimes I need to get out of my head about the negative parts and tell myself the positive parts. And I believe that's part of self-care as well, is just trying to see the positive. And it's kind of hard being an artist because, you thrive off of pain. And the truth part is, it's there too. And that's something that I try to see as well. And I try to balance in my life. So this is a little bit about me and how I try to balance my self-care, especially as, a woman with a lot of anxiety, depression, imposter syndrome. So even times I'm am I good enough to do a talk about this? But yeah, so thank you for listening. Yeah.
Thank you to all the presenters today. Melody, Redmila, Amber, Tanea. Thanks for those words. They're very important. We spent some time reflecting on this particular presentation, and we knew it would come across strong, because it's timely, it's necessary, it's got a good intent, a good purpose. So again, thank you all for coming out, spending time with us today, having an interest in self-care and indigenous cultures. Thank you.